This episode has been brought to you by justinform.com. If you're tired of being censored, tired of having your data stolen and sold, go to justinform.com, a social media site where all voices are welcome.
I really hate that I have to do this video. I hate that I have to do it about Bernie Sanders. I hate that he is being this irresponsible. I hate that he's perpetuating this type of ignorance and this type of fear-mongering. I thought that he was above this. But nonetheless, he kind of put me in this position. So we'll check out this clip and then we'll break it down from there.
Helsinki summit yesterday, President Trump embarrassed our country. He undermined American values and openly sided with Russia's authoritarian leader, Vladimir Putin, against the U.S. intelligence community's unanimous assessment that Russia interfered in our 2016 presidential election. John McCain is right when he says it was, and I quote, one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president in memory. The damage inflicted by President Trump's naivete, egotism, false equivalence, and sympathy for autocrats is difficult to calculate. But it is clear that the summit in Helsinki was a tragic mistake, end quote. That's not Bernie Sanders. That is former Republican presidential candidate, Senator John McCain of Arizona. Today, after a strong international backlash, Trump, in a bizarre statement, claimed he misspoke and, of course, blamed the media for reporting what he said. Even now, he could not help but suggest that the electoral interference, quote, could be other people also, end quote, and not just Russia. Today, we face an unprecedented situation of a president who, for whatever reason, refuses to acknowledge an attack on American democracy. Either he really doesn't understand what has happened, or he is under Russian influence because of compromising information they may have on him, or because he is ultimately more sympathetic to Russia's authoritarian, oligarchic form of society than he is to American democracy. Whatever the reason, Congress must act and must act now to demand that the President of the United States represent the interest of the American people and not Russia. Let us be clear. Russia has been meddling not only in U.S. elections, but in the elections of other democracies, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, to name just a few. Russia's goal is to advance its own interests by weakening the transatlantic alliances of democracies that arose after World War II, while also inflaming internal divisions in each of these countries. We should also be clear that this interference is directed from the very highest levels of the Russian government. Last week, Special Counsel Robert Mueller announced a set of indictments of 12 members of Russia's military intelligence service, the GRU. There can be no doubt that, given the nature of Russian government, Vladimir Putin was directly involved in this effort.
So, as you can see, Bernie kind of went on a tirade just there. Wrong is almost like an understatement in this situation, right? Bernie Sanders, you are the same one who was smart enough and brave enough to stand up to the intelligence community when they were pushing for the war in Iraq, and that was the right thing to do. You didn't trust the intelligence community then because your gut, common sense, maybe understanding and knowing your history led you to believe that there was probably something off about their overall assessment. And surprisingly enough, you have not reached this conclusion. In fact, for this particular instance dealing with Russia, you have just, I don't want to say you've become a little unhinged, but it's almost like you've become a little unhinged. Now, I am, you know how I feel. If it came down to it, for Bernie, I would still vote for him because I know that he's not going to start a war with anybody. But I do believe that Bernie can be naive. I do think that Bernie is fantastic when it comes to domestic policy, but his foreign policy leaves a lot to be desired, clearly. I think he has the best of intentions, but nonetheless, you're perpetuating that Ben Shapiro, that BS right now. That's what you're perpetuating. You claimed that the intelligence agencies unanimously agreed. That story has been debunked. That story has been retracted. And that, once again, kind of gives me a glimpse into how much you've been keeping up with affairs in general. You've been dealing in headline politics, and it's showing. I know you've been busy campaigning. I know you've been busy traveling the country and working for the middle class, and that's great. But this is headline politics. That story was retracted. They don't all unanimously agree. And in fact, two of the two agencies that agreed, which was the CIA and the FBI, and the FBI specifically, the two top agents on that russiagate investigation were fired. If you don't remember, they were fired. And they also lied to Congress and the Senate before they were fired. They also leaked data. We can go on for days about that, but my point is, so that unanimous intelligence thing is not true. Once again, if you would do your research, which, once again, you're busy, got it, good. But you shouldn't speak ignorantly about things that you don't understand. Because once again, it is dangerous. It is dangerous to do so, especially in your position, where a lot of people look to your counsel to figure out how they feel about a particular situation. And what I'm referring to specifically is that the assumption that Russia just invaded Ukraine for no reason. You know as well as I do, nobody just invades anybody for no reason, period. Not in contemporary times. And the way you portrayed it is if they did invade for no reason. But a little bit of research would show you that Russia did not invade Crimea or annex Crimea for no reason. They did not advance towards Ukraine for no reason. What happened was the Ukrainian oligarchs decided to work with the EU and the United States to try and go through China to cut Russia out of any trade discussions. So Russia did not perform that annex as an act of aggression. More so, it was their way of pretty much reassuring the national community or international community that they weren't going to be bullied by the Western world, by Western oligarchs, I should say, because that's who ends up making these laws and passing these type of resolutions anyway, by Western oligarchs. Now, Bernie Sanders talks about election meddling, talks about the importance of maintaining healthy elections. And I'm right there with you, Bernie. I am. But it is a little more than insulting that we have evidence upon evidence upon evidence upon evidence upon lawsuit just in Florida. The man that you once hired to work with you on the Fed, Tim Canova, had his ballots destroyed, which means that your ballots were destroyed. You are aware of that. And you have said absolutely nothing. They weren't destroyed by some foreign enemy, some Russian boogeyman. They were destroyed by Brenda Snipes, who resides right here in the district. You're talking about Putin as if he is uniquely worse than our leadership. When did you get in the business of lambasting presidents and leaders for trying to facilitate peace? And then for you to even go on and talk about all the elections that Russia meddles in, I'm sure they probably meddle in elections because that's what superpowers do. But let's be honest. Do we really want to try to take the moral high ground when it comes to election interference? You personally, after you have been personally silent on the election rigging that took place, on the exit polling that was no longer taking place because they wanted to hide the fact that they were cheating you, when you did not challenge the convention as much as people would have liked you to, and I understand why you didn't, but that doesn't change the fact that you still did not contest the convention. After you knew that Hillary Clinton lost at that convention, I'm sure you're very aware of the head count. I know that you are aware of it. I know that you know about the 2 counts where you won. You're not that far out of the loop. And then for you to perpetuate this lie, it is a lie, that Russia was responsible for the Skrillex or the Skripal poisoning whenever that got debunked. It was covered by The Guardian. They were not responsible for it. I know that you're not confident in almost anything you're saying, because when you are confident, your body language is totally different. You're waving your hands around, and you don't speak in as many absolutes when you're confident. Speaking in absolution in the way you are right now, especially about unsubstantiated BS, that Ben Shapiro, that bullshit. Like, speaking in absolutes in that regard is like indicative of someone who isn't confident about what they're saying. And it's easier to fearmonger than actually provide proof. But considering you've been a victim of McCarthyism yourself in the past, I would assume that you would be the first one to notice what's going on. I'm disappointed. I really am. And most of your supporters are as well. You need to look beyond mainstream media. Look beyond these intelligence agencies you didn't talk about all the bias that was confirmed by the OIG. You didn't talk about the fact that Andrew McCabe was fired not by Donald Trump, but by the FBI for his conflicts of interest. All these people were involved in formulating the russiagate narrative. Half of them aren't even in office anymore. Or half of them don't hold their position anymore. Why? Because they were lying. It's a political agenda. And I'm going to leave everybody with this. If I was doing an international investigation for high crimes and I wanted to actually catch the perpetrators, I would not go announcing indictments to the entire world so that they would know never to come back. And even still, because we have sealed indictments, but even still, why would you announce indictments against these Russians but not announce a single indictment against Julian Assange when you were so sure that he was the hacker and he's working with Russia? Is it possible because, well, one, you don't want him to enter the discovery stage, but two, you don't want him to have a conversation with the Congress or the Senate? You want to continue this investigation for as long as possible because it's about political agendas. Nothing more, nothing less. It's politics. They don't care.